The Honourable Max Trenorden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll start with congratulating you in reaching your higher office, and also all of you, particularly those of you who've got here into this chamber for the first time into politics. I very much heartily warm you into the realm of politics, and I look forward to, Mr. President, watching with great interest to just what we do over the next 4 years in working together. Michael Walter Mick Gaffer is a person who I model my parliamentary life on and who is a mentor of mine. He was elected in 1962 and was a representative of the then Country Party of Western Australia. Like me, the Honourable Mick Gaffer started as a member for Avon in the Legislative Assembly and then served in the Legislative Council. He held an important dual role. He was also the chairman of CBH, in a role in which he excelled. I was the last member for Avon, and I expressed my admiration to the previous members for Avon, the Honourable Ken McIver and the Honourable Mick Gaffer, both outstanding men who represented the seat with distinction. I also take this opportunity to thank the people who have believed in me and supported me during my parliamentary life. At times, things have been wonderful, but at other times I've been left wondering. My children, my new wife Veronica, and my staff have always been and still are my greatest fans, not only giving me advice, but giving me abuse whenever I needed it to keep me working hard and keep me focused. And I'd also recognise, Mr. President, the people who have shown faith in me to represent them. I'm told that in Chinese culture, if you say to another person, "May you live in interesting times," it's a curse. Just why that may be so is something we might reflect upon. The implication is that in a society where stability of all things is prized above all else, change has blown that stability apart by placing demands upon all in society that could not be tolerated or even endured. Whether invited or not, we do live in interesting times. And as a member of the party that represents rural Australia, and in my case, regional Western Australia, I must try to bring those things we know and have learned into Western Australian society for the good of all, for the people, for the land, for the sea, all living things. That's our primary mandate. We were always greenies. Sometimes very good, sometimes not. We have always known that our prosperity will be dependent on sustainability, and that means finding good farming practices, good mining practices, good fishing practices, and this applies to all other endeavours. For us, this wasn't just a sea change or a tree change, it was life itself. A life that needed to flourish if we were to be and remain prosperous. Nothing has changed, Mr. President, and if we forget those things, we do so at our peril. We, the Nationals, have changed. You have seen evidence of that change in the election result. Maybe the criticism of our direction in the past was right. We've been confronted on so many fronts by new realities, we had to evolve. We bring many things to the changes shaking our country and the world. I've alluded to them just now, but above all, I want to suggest the greatest skill that we bring to our country is the ability to make something happen. Good, renewable, profitable things. However, our dreams must be based on reality. We all must dream, but for a dream to come true, it must be anchored in reality. We in the regions are part of the circle of life. We are part of the wind, the heat, the dust, the cold and the rain. These are the sorts of things we live through, and we accept that change is happening. Now this seems at first sight a simple thing, but it isn't. Anyone who has farmed or run a business of any size at all knows these things. Thousands of failures in business every year are proof of just how hard it is to get things right, to make something happen, and as I said, sustainably and profitably. The skill to make something happen is a skill upon which we all utterly depend. Our party and those who support our principles need to assure ourselves that its primacy in life and productivity of our nation is not an optional extra. In the years to come, we'll have the opportunity to reinvent rural life. Much will be old and tested, much will be new. And what's new and that new life will grow in large measure from the policies and ideas that we talk about in this term of our office. But we have to be bold, imaginative, courageous, resolute, and with tenacity of purpose that has come from being people who know how hard it is to make good things happen. And now I'll just suggest some of the things we need to do and to think about to create a bright future in a world full of adversity. Let's think about agriculture and climate realities, new economic circumstances, things that seem certain. Our responsibility is to plan, not just to react, but our plans and action must always be grounded in reality. Only from this realistic base can we make sustainable change. First, we must look exhaustively by the means by which we generate and use energy for productive purposes. Nothing could be more important, and in our state, nothing's been more neglected. It's decision time, Mr. President. No more hoping things will be okay. They won't, unless the government sees the day, and we must. What would a far-seeing energy policy have to be to give us energy security? Energy will have to be locally generated and controlled, whether or not it's coal generated, gas generated, wind generated, marine generated, biomass generated, or solar or thermal generated. From these technologies, very important industries can, must and will emerge. Plastochemical, hydrogen, desalinated water and many others will drive the marine, geothermal and solar power futures. Regional businesses and essential services will need to have in place technologies and infrastructures that will enable them to do this, plus a tax regime that accelerates it. We must not ever be caught unprepared and waiting for the boat to come in. Stratospheric oil prices of a year or so ago showed just how vulnerable we are, how destabilising on our productivity it was and it remains. These prices have had an extremely debilitating effect on industry and the business sector in Western Australia. Gas, we need to concentrate on and recognise exploration. A single pipeline in Western Australia is extremely vulnerable. The stakes are absolutely the highest, not just high. Without affordable energy for all, we cannot make a living, we cannot live. Our policies must bring us energy independence as soon as possible. Whatever the trade or technical skills, the planning and infrastructure we need to enhance or acquire to reach these goals should be planned for and acted on now. There is no time to procrastinate. We need a policy framework that recognises the major challenges we face. Secondly, we have an enormous challenge to add much more consumer value than cost in an ever-increasing competitive global food industry environment. With a population of less than 80,000, the wheat belt punches way above its weight, with an estimated $5 billion contribution to the state of Western Australia in 2006, much more in 2008. We need to meet the newly developing international consumer tastes and demands, which have an overall description of slow foods, while retaining mass export markets. West Australia's agriculture industry will be a world leader if it focuses on slow foods. Slow foods is an ideal that's not just about health, it's also about wealth. Fresh, top quality, local produce brings far higher price for much less volume, whether sold in our communities, interstate or overseas. It is now time for us to be involved in future health and economic prosperity. As research compiled by Dr. David Hughes, Professor of Food Marketing at the Imperial College in London, attests, the reason behind it is a health-conscious, ageing global population fully aware that almost 60% of the population of Western nations suffer from obesity and related serious health problems, and 15% are glucose intolerant. In the future, the demand will be for fresher, healthier, seasonal, natural, traditional foods that contain chemicals and vitamins that are anti-aging and disease inhibiting. Slow food is top quality, in-season produce that is prepared traditionally. The slow foods philosophy is to consume fresh, quality produce that's in season, wherever possible, delivered almost directly from the paddock to the plate. Fresh food markets and high-quality food outlets are rapidly expanding. That can be seen occurring in Perth today. High-quality, high-cost outlets, high-quality, low-cost outlets are attracting people in their thousands. Business and governments that consider slow foods just to be a passing fad will rue the day they made that mistake. Therefore, the Department of Agriculture and Food needs to get into this century. Quality products are the future for Western Australia. Obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular problems caused by poor dietary decisions are a massive, multi-billion potential market for Western Australia. And again, to quote Dr. David Hughes, in his research he refers to the migration to the poles, which outlines significant changes to the world food markets. And some of these changes are new and improved to traditional, ready to eat to natural, unprocessed, fast food to slow food, just me to friends and family, low price to premium price, all year to seasonal, open supply to closed supply chains. And thirdly, Mr. President, to move on to climate change. We're all painfully aware that climate change has become a new reality for the world and for us in Western Australia in particular. This is impacting on the state every day. We hear constantly of the dire prediction that climate modelling is throwing out. Modelling has its benefits, but in the past has shown that the predictions will be substantially wrong. Early modelling of the present pandemic swine flu showed that tens of thousands of people were going to die, but reality has kicked in, and that's not the case. There is a magnificent library in place which has recorded climate change for tens of thousands of years. The trees, the ocean sediments, ice, stalactites, written history, seas, fossils, and many other sources tell us exactly what we can expect in Western Australia in the future. The research in Western Australia needs to be based on these realities so our decisions are sustainable. What's to be done? In Western Australia, we need to bring as many farmers to the expanded Ord River scheme as quickly and as prudently as we can. We can't make it rain, but we can take our skills and the knowledge base, the farmers, to where it does. This will have to be done with the utmost care and sensitivity so that all stakeholders are happy with the outcomes. Our traditional landholders may well become the landlords of substantial new areas of food and fibre production that breathe new life and new commercial life into vast areas of our north. We need a comprehensive strategy of potential new arable areas created by climate change. We need to expedite the farming of all those areas known to us already, where good soil and reliable rainfall exists. There's a state system called WALIS, West Australian Land Information System, and it's been around for a long period of time and has the capacity to identify land for future uses. We need to mandate increased funding of our fine research institutions to grow their knowledge of tropical agriculture and all its risks in such a way that our footprint on the land and the rivers is light and sustainable. We must avoid the mistakes of the past, which means we have to face them. In our rural schools, we need to examine the curriculum very carefully. Whilst the known core skills remain essential, a new and emerging generation may have needs in science and technology, plant and animal husbandry, and in the built environment that need to be addressed in entirely new ways. Again, change. I'll mention some examples. There are many more that could have been given, but I'll just give a couple. The growing of fibre for paper. In Australia, we have used our cool climate, slow-growing forest as a principal source of fibre for paper. It has always been controversial. As a matter of some urgency, we should look at the very large number of plants that could easily substitute for slow-growing trees that grow quickly and well in our tropical, Midwest and agricultural regions. Furthermore, the technology exists to turn many long fibre plants, rattan, bamboo and the like, into substitute wood. The results are astounding and need to be introduced here. Our information base is entirely inadequate and this must be remedied. On one of my celebrated fact-finding tours, I visited Alberta in Canada and saw a farmer-owned plant turning wheat straw into fine quality, widely used building product. A simple process of steam, resin and pressing produces floorboards, internal and external wall panelling and specified stress-tested roof trusses. The Central Wheat Belt on several occasions has been tested for the availability of wheat straw, and there is as much available product as there is in Alberta. This product is cheaper, more sustainable, environmentally friendlier than chopping down our precious trees. Grain straw and sugar cane are a proven source for building products and are a solution. The construction of houses and buildings in our tropical north. For too many years we have, at huge expense, imported the materials, the style, the construction methods best suited to our cities. In all candour, I have some doubts that that style is even suited there. But nevertheless, it's folly that we haven't mandated interested parties to modernise the construction of fine homes from local materials and having done so on an industrial scale. Missionaries built fine buildings with none of the technological advantages that we have today, whether it be from stone, rammed earth, poured concrete or whatever the source. We can visit towns like Broome today, but we neglect to see that in that town alone, buildings are erected that took into account just where they were and the needs that that climate created. We must create a level playing field for Australian food producers and processors. We produce the best and safest food in the world. That costs. Yet we allow imports that do not have the same standards for food safety and therefore those on costs. That is unfair competition, and it also works against the interests of consumers. The Australian food safety watchdogs should be funded to do a proper job on assessing imports in terms of pesticide residues, contaminants, etc. And the results must be published so consumers can make an informed choice. Many foods from overseas are grossly substantial and are cheaper, not just because of cheaper labour, but also because of the farming and practices that would be illegal here. By failing to take this issue seriously, the federal government is actually helping importers to take market share from Australians, and in that process exposing Australian consumers to greater food safety risks. If you can't be profitable in your own domestic market, it'll be even more difficult to provide capital to create an international market. The solution lies in Biosecurity Australia or the Food Safety Authority only allowing those foods that meet the needs and standards that Australian producers must meet. The current situation where producers have to meet higher and therefore costlier standards than foreign competition is, well, it's un-Australian. Finally, and you'll be pleased about that, finally, I raise the issue of electoral reform. It is in reference to the One Vote, One Value Act. The Honourable Jim McGuinty, while promoting his act, had discussions with the Liberal Party and the Greens, who had input to the final effect of the bill. The Greens established a system for this House, and a section of the Liberal Party gave passage to the bill. The Nationals were never consulted, but we were briefed. The Act is designed to give preference to the Labor Party in forming government. This was ill-conceived. The result of the legislation, and I stated this point during debates in the other place, is that the Liberal Party would be the major benefactor. Bruce Topperwin's paper, published on his legal page, discusses three issues. The second of which is electoral equality. The paper states the cases of McKinley versus the Commonwealth, the McKinley case, and the McGuinty case. They're both raised. The paper debates whether the constitutional requirement that members of the House of Representatives be directly chosen by the people of the Commonwealth meant that equal numbers of electors are required within electoral divisions. All judges of the High Court, except Murphy J, held the Constitution did not require equal numbers of electors in electoral divisions. The Supreme Court of the United States has held that, and I quote, as nearly as practical, one man's vote in a congressional election is to be worth as much as another. End of the quote. The Supreme Court of Canada has a finding of its own and has settled on a definition of effective representation which allows up to 25% variation between ridings. In the UK, several ridings have insisted on a single seat, whether this be perceived advantage or disadvantage on the number of voters based on community of interest. The mother of our Constitution does not use equality of voters as described by the American Constitution. The Australian High Court judges involved in this decision stated, Judge Barwick CJ stated, unlike the case in the American Constitution, the Australian Constitution is built on a confidence in a system of parliamentary government with ministerial responsibility. He and other judges rejected the American cases to assist in deciding this matter. Judge Tuvey J stated he declined to rely on American cases in guidances and manner, instead of relying on Canadian cases for that purpose because Canada was adopted and built on the British tradition. Judge McHugh J stated the Australian people do not regard one vote, one value as an essential requirement of elective democracy, and he also rejected the American cases as they would produce inaccurate results. Judge Gunnell J stated the Canadian situation is far more applicable to Australian society. The One Vote, One Value bill is based on the American Constitution, and the premise of the bill has twice been found in our High Court to be against the intent of the Australian Constitution. The American Constitution speaks of equality. The Australian Constitution speaks of effective representation. The bill requires amendment. Other matters worthy of a rewrite are having people automatically registered for voting on reaching voting age based on their birth certificate and state records. An opt-out clause for voters based on the issues that are current practice, for example, religious beliefs. And a redistribution of seats based on population and not on registered voters. Mr. President, I finish as I started. We live in interesting times.